Well, interesting words from Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke and Jackson Hole, now lowering expectations for QE3. Let's bring in Mohamed El-Erian, PIMCO CEO, for his analysis. You know, interesting point you just made to me, Mohamed, is that this is much more a speech to other agencies than it is to central bankers.
Yeah, this is quite a humble speech in the sense that Chairman Bernanke says, look, we do have some structural issues facing our economy. The Fed cannot influence the long-term growth. It focuses on cyclical. And then he lists a whole number of areas that need action, all of which are outside the domain of the Fed. So he's really trying to shift some of the policy spotlight away from the Fed and towards other government agencies, and appropriately so, Poppy.
How would you grade this speech? Because heading into it, there were three things you wanted. You wanted an acknowledgement of how bad the situation is, an acknowledgement that the Fed can only do so much, that other agencies that have structural change power need to take action, and that without those two forces coming together, real change to the economy can't happen. Did he significantly and appropriately address what you believe needed to be addressed?
So he took a step towards two of the three. So the speech speaks about structural issues facing the economy, says how different this recession and this recovery have been. On the second one, he does point to a number of policies, not only policy areas, but it's interesting that he talks about the quality of policy making, which speaks to not just content but also process. But what he didn't do, relative to what I would have liked him to do, is that he didn't say that the effectiveness of the Fed itself cannot be taken away from what else is happening. Another way is trying to put more pressure on government agencies, not just talking about them, but just also saying that the Fed cannot move.
He really is speaking in the latter half of this piece, seems directly to Congress and telling Congress in a more subtle way what S&P told Congress when it downgraded the rating of the United States. You have a lot of responsibility for the state of this economy, and a lot of the onus is on you, Washington, to get us out of this. What line in Bernanke's comments stood out most to you on that front?
So two lines. One, he speaks, and I don't remember the exact words, but something about the possibility of the situation on the fiscal side spinning out of control. That's a very strong statement for a Fed chairman. Secondly, he talks about the quality of policymaking and speaks to the whole debacle. He doesn't call it that. I call it that, the whole debacle of the debt ceiling. So in Congress, he speaks to what's coming up with the super committee on the fiscal side, and also, guys, let's have a better policy-making process, because he speaks to how the debt ceiling debacle undermined the economy and market confidence.
Bernanke said, and we hear this from him in almost every speech, the Fed has tools and it is ready to take action. How much power do you really think the Fed has now?
The Fed has power to influence financial variables. So it certainly has been and will continue to influence the yield curve. It has somewhat less effectiveness in influencing stock prices. It can do it for a little bit, but not for a long time, because that depends much more on fundamentals. And where it's becoming clear is that the Fed cannot deliver on its own economic outcomes. So it can deliver what economists call the intermediate objective, what comes beforehand, but not the economic outcome. That's what went wrong with QE2. QE2 was designed to do the following. You push people into buying risk assets. You push up the price of risk assets. People feel wealthier, companies feel better, and therefore what's supposed to happen is that this pulls up the economy. Well, we got the first part, we didn't get the second part, and ultimately valuations collapse back down towards where the economy is. So ultimately the question is whether you believe that Mr. Bernanke on his own can influence economic outcomes. And what he's telling us today is, guys, I need help. I can't do it all on my own.
I need help. That is a bold statement, even though it wasn't directly laid out. That is what we read between the lines in this speech. Coming ahead of what is expected to be a major jobs announcement from the Obama administration, do you believe that Bernanke held back a bit in what he said, waiting to see what structural changes are going to be made on the government side?
I think he was the warm-up act, whether he meant to or not, but he ended up being the warm-up act for President Obama's September 5th speech. Because he said, look, here I can keep you entertained for a while, but the big issues are outside my domain. They are elsewhere. And where is that elsewhere? It's for the administration to propose policies, and it's for Congress, hopefully, to approve policies.
Finally, heading into the September meeting of the central bankers, what first do you think we will see as a result of that, and what does this economy need to see?
I think what we all have to recognize is that the Fed has imperfect tools. It's operating without the help of other agencies. And the global environment is becoming even more difficult in terms of Fed effectiveness. So I think we should be restrained in what we expect the Fed to deliver in terms of economic outcomes. We should look much broader and say that this requires what PIMCO called the Sputnik moment of all policymakers stepping up to the plate and not just the Fed.
Not just putting the onus on the Fed, but truly on Congress and Washington to act. Mohamed El-Erian, thank you so much.
Thank you.